I'm Rajni Aital from Maharani Arts College for Women, Mysore. I'll be discussing about thinking and reasoning, second sem, fifth chapter. Humans are highly adaptable creatures. We live in deserts, jungles, mountains, and recently in space stations. Unlike other species, our success owes more to intelligence and thinking abilities than it does to physical strength or speed. Thought can be conceived as a language of the mind. Actually, there may not be more than one such language. One mode of thought corresponds to the stream of sentences that we seem to hear in our mind. It is referred to as propositional thought because it expresses a proposition or claim. Another mode, imaginal thought, corresponds to images, particularly visual ones, that we can see in our minds. Research on thinking in adults have emphasized these two modes, particularly the propositional mode. Thinking or cognition, a Latin word meaning to know, can be defined as mental activity that goes on in the brain when a person is processing information, organizing it, understanding it, and communicating it to others. Thinking includes memory, but it is much more. When people think, they are not only aware of the information in the brain, but also are making decisions about it, comparing it to other information, and using it to solve problems. Thinking also includes more than just a kind of verbal streams of conscious. When people think, they often have images as well as words in their mind. Cognition means thinking and using knowledge. This is a field of cognitive psychologists who also deal with how people organize their thoughts into knowledge. Cognition begins with attending to something and characterizing what it is. Psychologists use the term cognition to refer collectively to these processes, which includes acquiring, storing, retrieving, and using information. Psychologists define thinking as a manipulation of mental representations of information. A representation may take the form of a word, a visual image, a sound, or data in any other sensory modality that is stored in memory. Thinking transforms a particular representation of information into new and different forms, allowing us to answer questions, solve problems, or reach goals. Cognition refers to mentally processing information. Our thoughts take many forms, including problem solving, reasoning, and even daydreaming. Although thinking is not limited to humans, image trying to teach an animal to match the feats of Shakuntala Devi, who once set a world record for mental calculation by multiplying two randomly chosen 13-digit numbers. Concepts. Concepts are mental categories for objects, events, experiences, or ideas that are similar to one another in one or more respects. Concepts do play a central role in our task of understanding the world around us and representing it mentally. It also represents an entire class. It is a set of properties that we associate with a particular class. Our concept of cat, for example, includes the properties of having four legs and whiskers. Concepts serve some major functions in mental life. One of those choose is to divide the world into manageable units, that is, cognitive economy. Many different objects are seen as instances of the concept cat, many others as instances of the concept chair, and so on. By treating different objects as members of the same concept, we reduce the complexity of the word that we have to represent mentally. For example, imagine that in conversation, a friend uses the term zip drive. You have never heard it before, so you ask what she means. When she replies, it's a speedy, high capability portable hard disk drive useful for backing up files on your computer and transferring large number of computer files from one computer to the another. You are home free. You already have a concept for hard drive and immediately place this new term in that category. Now you can think about it quite effectively. You know that it stores large numbers of computer files, that is portable, and it can help accomplish certain tasks such as helping you to avoid losing information in the event of computer crash. In this and countless other situations, concepts allow us to represent a lot of information about diverse objects, events, or ideas in a highly effective manner. Artificial and natural concepts. Artificial concepts can be clearly defined by a set of rules or properties. Thus, a tomato is a fruit because it possesses the properties established by botanists for this category. Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Many people would answer a vegetable. Botanists, however, classify it as a fruit because it contains seeds and its structure is definitely more like that of apples and pears than those of potatoes or spinach. This fact illustrates the importance distinction between what psychologists term artificial or logical concepts and natural concepts. In contrast, natural concepts have no fixed or readily specified set of defining features. They are fuzzy around the edges, yet they are more accurately reflect the state of the natural world, which rarely offers us the luxury of hand and fast, clearly defined concepts. For example, consider the following question. Is chess a sport? Is a pickle a vegetable? Is a psychologist a scientist? Is someone who helps a terminally ill person commit suicide a murder? As you can readily see, these all relate to common concepts: sport, vegetable, science, crime. But what specific attributes are necessary for inclusion in each concept? If you find yourself puzzled, don't be surprised. The boundaries of natural concepts are somewhat indistinct. Relational concepts are based on how an object relates to something else or how its features relate to one another. All of the following are relational concepts: larger, above, left, north, and upside down. Another example is brother, which is defined as a male considered in his relation to another person having the same parents. Distinctive concepts have at least one of the several possible features. These are either or concepts. To belong to category, an item must have this features or that features or another feature. For example, in cricket, out is either about, caught out, run out, LBW, hit wicket, etc. The either or quality of distinctive concepts make them harder to learn. Categorization refers to the process of assigning an object to a concept. When we categorize an object, we treat it as if it has many of the properties associated with the concept, including properties that we have not directly perceived. A second major function of concepts is that they allow us to predict information that is not readily perceived, referred to as predictive power. For example, Our concept of apple is associated with such hard to perceive properties as having seeds and being edible, as well as with readily perceived properties like being round, having a distinctive color, and coming from trees. We may use the visible properties to categorize some object as an apple, that the object is red, round, and hangs from a tree, and then infer that the object has less visible properties as well. It has seeds and is edible. As we can see, concepts enable us to go beyond directly perceived information. We also have concepts of activities such as eating, of states such as being old, and of abstractions such as truth, justice. In each case, we know something about the properties that are common to all members of the concept. Widely used concepts like these are generally associated with one word name. This allows us to communicate quickly about experiences that occur frequently. We can also make up concepts on the spot to serve some specific goal. For example, if you are planning an outing, you might generate the concept things to take on a camping trip. These kinds of goal driven concepts facilitate planning. Although such concepts are used relatively infrequently and accordingly have relatively long names, they still provide us with some cognitive economy and predictive power. For example, consider the following natural concepts: clothing, art. For clothing, most people think of items like shirts, pants, or shoes. They are far less likely to mention wetsuits, mink coats, or coats of armor. Similarly, for art, most people think of painting, drawings, and sculptures. Fewer think of artwork such as light show at Disney World. Prototypes emerge from our experience with the external world and a new items that might potentially fit within their category or when compared with them. The more attributes new items share with an existing prototype, the more likely they are to be included within the concept. The properties associated with the concept seem to fall in two sets. One set is of properties makes us the prototype of the concept. The other properties that describe the best examples of the concept. In the concept grandmother, for example, your prototype might include such properties as a woman who is in her 60s, has gray hair, and loves to spend time with her children. The prototype is what usually comes to mind when we think of the concept. But although the prototype properties may be true of the typical grandmother, they clearly are not true of all instances. Think of a woman in her late 30s who likes her daughter, had a child while a teenager. This means that a concept must contain something in addition to the prototype. This additional something is a core that comprises the properties that are most important for being a member of a concept. Your core of the concept grandmother would probably include the properties of being a female parent of a parent, the properties that are essential for being a member of the concept. As another example, consider the concept bird. Your prototype likely includes the properties of a flying and creeping, which works for the best examples of the bird such as robins and blue jays, but not for other examples such as ostriches and penguins. Your core would probably specify something about the biological basis of birdhood. Having certain genes or at least having parents that are birds. Note that in both our examples, grandmother and a bird, the prototype properties are silent but not perfect indicators of concept. Whereas the core properties are more central to concept membership. However, there is an important difference between a concept like grandmother and a concept like bird. The core of grandmother is a definition and it is easily applied. Anyone who is a female parent of a parent must be a grandmother, and it is relatively easy to determine whether someone has these defining. The core of grandmother is a definition and it is easily applied. Anyone who is a female parent of a parent must be a grandmother, and it is relatively easy to determine whether someone has these defining properties. Concepts like this one are said to be well defined. Categorizing a person or object into a well-defined category involves determining whether it has a core of defining properties. In contrast, the core of bird is hardly a definition. We may know only that genes are somehow involved. For example, the core properties are hidden from the view. If we happen upon a small animal, we can hardly inspect its gene or inquire about its parentage. All we can do is check whether it does certain things, such as fly and creep, and use this information to decide whether it is a bird. Concepts like bird are said to be fuzzy. Deciding whether an object is an instance of a fuzzy concept often involves determining its similarity to the concept prototype. Most natural concepts seem to be fuzzy. They lack true definitions, and categorization of these concepts relies heavily on prototype. Some instances of fuzzy concepts have more prototype properties than other instances. Among birds, for example, a robin will have the properties of flying, whereas an ostrich will not. The more prototype properties an instance has, the more typical of the concept it is considered to be. In the case of bird, most people rate a robin as more typical than a chicken, and a chicken as more typical than an ostrich. In the case of apple, they rate red apples as more typical than green ones, since red seems to be property of the concept apple, and so on. The degree to which an instance is typical has a major effect of categorization. When people are asked whether a picturized animal is a bird, a robin produces an immediate yes, whereas a chicken requires a longer decision time. When young children are asked the same question, a robin will almost inevitably be classified correctly, whereas a chicken will often be declared a non-bird. Typically, also determines what we think of what we encounter, the name of the concept. Hearing the sentence, there is a bird outside your window, we are far more likely to think of a robin than a vulture. And what comes to mind will obviously influence what we make of the sentence. Schemas.